Ce podcast est une diffusion du Cannes Football Club, l'alternative foot. Allez au cannesfootballclub.com.
Welcome to Soccer by Paul and Hady, episode 5. I'm along with my colleague Hady Raphael from culturesoccer.com. We've both been at the Impact last night for the 3-3 draw with FC Dallas. So we're going to review the game and talk about some other aspects in and around that game and what our prospects may be for the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. Very difficult game yesterday. Very difficult game for the fans because we saw exactly what happened. Up 3-0 and then Dallas scores 3 and it's 3-3 at the end. It's really hard to swallow. There was a very good atmosphere in the grounds, really amazing. We had, I think it was like close to being sold out. Yeah. And I was very surprised because I thought, they were forecasting rain for the whole, during the whole week they were forecasting rain and there wasn't any rain and people showed up. Even if there was a high possibility of rain, I was very impressed by
there was a great crowd there last night and a good atmosphere too, and it was something that Bojan remarked on in his press conference as well. And this guy's played in much bigger stadiums than Stade Saputo in front of much bigger crowds, but he did remark and how much he enjoyed the atmosphere last night, if not the eventual result. And yes, it was a tough one for the fans. I mean, they'd gone from being in a state of euphoria probably at one stage, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes into the second half, and then to concede 3 goals and not manage for the side, not to manage the game as well as they really should have. Highly disappointing, and another chance lost really.
Yeah, exactly. And just for our listeners that didn't really follow the game, just to give the few points there. So the Impact got off on a very good start with Lassi Lapalainen scoring the first goal at the 8th minute. Then Lapalainen scored the second goal at the 45th minute, and it was 2-0 at halftime, which was really good. And then Luchi Gonzalez, the coach of Dallas, made a very important change and substitution by entering Zdenek Ondrasek for Brian Reynolds, and for me he was the man of the game, but we'll talk about that later. Then Orji Okonkwo scored the third goal, so 3-0 on a terrific cross from Safir Taider. Then Ondrasek scored a goal 3 minutes later at the 59th minute. And then Reto Ziegler on a penalty, a very logical penalty, at the 85th minute. And on the 90th minute, again on a corner, Ryan Hollingshead, who had a terrific game, scored on a corner from Michael Barrios, and the score was 3-3 at the end.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think what Luchi Gonzalez did at halftime by introducing Ondrasek, and I think it was his first ever MLS goal as well. It really did change the game, and it if you read my report on MountRoyalSoccer.com, I actually said he sort of he jostled the ingredients when he came on and shook them up, and I mean both sides. Because we found it, Montreal Impact found it very difficult to deal with him, and all of a sudden you had like a confident central defensive pairing or reasonably confident central defensive pairing, all at sea, and it really did make the difference. And you know what, when that first goal went in so soon after we had scored the third one, I right away felt the Impact weathered the storm for another 25 minutes. Could have maybe scored another goal or another 2. They had a couple of chances on breakaways, which involved Tabla. But when it came down to the bit, and once it got to 3-2, the signs became ever more ominous, and I think the inevitable happened in the 90th minute.
Exactly, and you know what? I've always said that. I did that. I said that at the radio on Media Maghreb. I said that in most of my articles. There's something that I don't like about the Impact, about the Montreal Impact. There's one thing that I really despise, is that whenever we have a big lead, we tend to wait for the opponent, even if we're dominating. And yesterday we were dominating until the 60th minute, we were really 60th, 58th minutes to be exact. We were dominating the play. Dallas didn't have even a single big chance on goal. The Impact was playing like beautifully. Yes, we didn't have a possession, but we were about 50-50, and the game finished at 50-50 possession. But you know what? That's what we do every time, is whenever we're dominating, we just give the play to the opponent, then we get that first goal, and then we're afraid. Yeah. And what happened yesterday, I'm sorry, Paul, but what happened yesterday, I don't know if you realized, and I talked about it on Twitter after the game, and even this morning, we're Sunday today, the 18th of August. I'm looking at the block, like the team all together, and the two wingers, Lapalainen and Okonkwo, and afterwards Baloo, were playing like left backs and right backs. Yeah. And at one point, I took a picture, and there was 6 players on the same line. The two central defenders with the two the real right back and the real left back, and then the two wingers exactly next to them.
Yeah.
How can you expect to counter?
Yeah.
And to counterattack, if you're asking your wingers to do 100 meters sprints for about 20 minutes in the game, it's impossible.
I think that was another thing that came out on the press conference after the game. Certainly Lapalainen, they asked him how he'd felt, or they asked him what he felt had happened to the team in the second half, and he spoke personally for himself, and he said that he had felt very tired in the second half. I guess we all watching thought that his legs had gone as well, and he wasn't the only one. But you can understand he's coming from the level of football he played in Finland, so already it's going to take a little bit of a transition for him, if you like. So he's obviously pacey. He's got the pace, and that helps. And the pace is one thing, but he probably doesn't yet have the right levels of stamina to play 90 minutes in MLS. Certainly not the way the way he was asked to play last night, or forced to play last night, where he was having to defend very deeply as well. And I think if you look at the first half, sometimes you can control a game when you don't have the ball. And we probably, I don't know what the possession breakdown was at halftime. It could have been around level, but
it was around level. Yeah. I saw the board at halftime, and it was 50-50.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
50-50.
But even when we didn't have the ball, you sensed that we were still in control, because your defensive block and your midfield four, they were falling back when we didn't have the ball. They looked comfortable. I think there was only really one anxious moment where Raitala made a block from, I can't remember which Dallas player it was, and the ball went wide for a corner. But we looked fairly comfortable. The only thing I would say about the first half performance, I didn't think it was wonderful either from an attacking perspective, but and maybe you'll point to the contribution of Lapalainen and say I'm wrong, and that's fair enough. But the 2 goals did come from crass mistakes from Dallas.
No,
they weren't part of our creation. There were 2 awful mistakes. I gotta give Lapalainen a lot of credit for the way he finished. He finished like with consummate ease. He finished like a true finisher. Wonderful instinct and all the rest, but I didn't think we played particularly well offensively in the first half.
I don't think so, but like you said, we were in control. And when you're in control, good things happen, and you take really the opportunity that you're given. Yep. And that's exactly what happened. We had an opportunity, 2 opportunities, and Lapalainen put them in the back of the net. Yep. And you have someone of Lapalainen's quality that he's able to really put the ball in the back of the net. So that's what we needed. Yeah. The thing that I don't understand is that we gave up that control and that domination in the mindset. As in your mindset, I know that when we saw that first goal from Dallas, we looked at the players and we realized that everybody was like afraid. Yeah. They were up 3-0. Yeah. You can't be afraid at 3-0. And
I honestly think there's a character flaw, there's a mentality flaw within the Impact side, and I think we've seen this time and time again this season. And 2-0 up at half-time, you got to be expecting to win the game. And it even got better than that. We went 3-0 up. And when the first goal, and this is not just true of last night, this is true of many games we have seen this season. You know, if the Impact can play a game and it goes to 0 into the latter stages, they're normally fine, right? But as soon as we concede a goal, it just looks as if the confidence drains out of the team defensively. And I'm not picking in the back four here, because you attack as a team and you defend as a team.
Yes.
But you know, once we concede a goal, it looks as if the confidence just drains away, and that happened last night.
Exactly, that happened exactly. But I want to talk a bit more about why it happened. Like, if we analyze it ourselves, why did it happen? What went wrong exactly? I know I've been reading a lot, of course, since yesterday night, reading comments on Twitter, because that's where we are, and a lot of people are pointing their fingers on Rémi Garde, because he didn't use his 3 changes again. He didn't really adjust his team. He didn't do the right moves, even tactically, or even with the personnel. A lot of people were saying, why did Jackson didn't come in? Why did Corrales didn't come in? And stuff like that. So I want to hear your opinion on that. I have my own. I'll talk about it later.
I mean, I just wouldn't point the finger at Rémi Garde. I think he's one of the components that forms the decision makers at the club, if you like. So, in respect to that, I think it goes deeper than just last night's match. And I think maybe if there was one decision he made, well, maybe a couple of things. I looked at our bench, and we didn't really have a defensive midfielder who could come in and help us, right? Last night, if we find ourselves in a 3-0 position to the good, like we did, there was nobody to come in and maybe add a little bit of defensive balance to the side. Now, part of that reason, or maybe the whole reason behind that, was because we didn't have another player available who could have sat on the bench and given us that, right? The one player who might have been able to do it for us, Michael Azira, left a couple of weeks ago, ironically. So there was that, and I think maybe if Remy made a bad substitution last night, it was probably the second one. But maybe he was caught up in the euphoria, 3-1 up, and the crowd was very buoyant, and everybody wanted to see Tabla, and maybe he was tempted a little bit to throw him on. And remember, he doesn't really know Tabla all that well, but at that point in the game, with us 3-1 up, I think Baya would have given us a lot more from a defensive perspective. And I think when you've seen Tabla on the park, yes, he tried to do a couple of nice fancy things. And in fact, one time he turned Reggie Cannon, and I thought he would have gone straight for goal, but he tried to turn Reggie Cannon again and lost the ball. And then he had a great chance to set up a Rudy, who had made a good run to the front post, and the ball went past him. So defensively as well, Tabla didn't really contribute. And I must admit, when I seen that Tabla was coming back to the club, I had mixed feelings about it, because obviously the boy's a talent. There's no doubt about that the boy's a talent, but he left, and one of the main things that we think about Tabla when he left our club is not just his talent, but his immaturity. And you wonder if he's got the immaturity to carry out instructions, because it didn't look as if he wanted to defend last night either.
Yeah, you know what? I partially agree with you with Tabla. Yeah, he made some good things offensively. Then, yeah, unfortunately, he didn't do it like good from start to finish. I thought he should have shot on goal when he did that first trick on Reggie Cannon. Yeah. But you know what? We needed, I think, a bit of spark in offensively. So I kind of understand Rémi's Garde change. What I don't understand is two things. Okay, I don't want to point fingers on Rémi Garde, because I think that it's the players that really made a mistake, and I'm gonna talk about that a bit later. But I want to just talk about the substitutions of Rémi Garde. The first one, I completely understand it. He wanted to bring a midfield in the game, which I completely understand. We were up the 3-1, not 3-0 when Shom entered.
3-0, yeah.
Yeah, 3-0 when Shom entered the game.
3-1. I think it had just gone 3-1.
Yeah, 3-1, exactly. Just 2 minutes afterwards. So he wanted to, of course. But you know what? I completely understand. But I don't think that the players understood that when he asks a midfielder to come in for Kirkic, so you're putting a more defensive player for a more offensive player. I think that should have triggered something in the player's mind, where you know what, our wingers don't need to defend that low anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people are telling me on Twitter, because I tweeted about that, and a lot of people are telling me, yeah, but it's guards' responsibility to do it. No, it's not. He can't take every player and every tactical thing during the game and just tell them, you need to do that. Move a bit more on the right, move a bit more on the left. That's not how it works. The players have to act. They have to be intelligent tactically. Yeah. And you know what? As a center, and usually that's the role of the goalkeeper and the central defender, because they have that whole view of the team. So who was it that was supposed to carry out these instructions? Yeah. I don't see anybody. We had Diallo before. Now we have nobody that really talks with the rest of the team to tell them, you know what? No, there's a midfielder that came in. So please, my dear wingers, Lapalainen, Tabla, you can move up a bit more. So we need to recuperate the ball a bit higher on the pitch and not lower.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Remy Gard cannot be on every player's shoulder like a parrot telling them what to do at different points of the game. And there's enough experience out there in the field, or you would hope there's enough experience out there in the field to take certain decisions for the good of the game. And this is when I talk about game management. I felt our game management over the last 40 minutes or whatever it was, the last 30 minutes after we were 3-0 up, was very, very poor, because there are players on the pitch who need to stand up and be leaders, and there are players on the pitch who need to help the younger players through this type of thing. And we really should have made a better job of keeping the ball, and we didn't do it. And it's either because we don't have that leadership there, and I don't think there are enough leaders in the team. For instance, we don't have somebody, even when Sam Piet's there, and I would I would say Sam is a leader, and he definitely adds something to the team from a defensive midfield perspective. But we still don't have someone in our midfield who can actually dominate and dictate a game. And by that I mean, and I'm not saying we don't need to talk about the levels that Roy Keane got to, because that was a very top of the world game. But we don't have somebody who can go in and dictate the pace of a game. And
a bit like Alexander Ring at New York City FC.
Well, exactly, yeah. And that's the kind of thing that we've been lacking for a long. Patrice Bernier used to be able to do it for us, to be fair. But since Patrice, I don't know if we've had that player in the middle of the field. And this guy will dictate the pace, and this guy tends to be the guy who kind of has that experience, has those leadership capabilities. Can help the others through the game, can tell them what to do when they're doing something wrong, because you do need to have an on-field leader. I'm just not sure that we have it.
I completely agree, but I think we're missing something else too. We don't have anybody, any leaders at the back either. Bakary Sagna, I'm sorry, at 36 years old and with the career that he had a good game yesterday. I'm not going to blame him for anything, but I think we need to hear him a lot more. If we look at the heat map, I looked a bit at the heat map of the game yesterday. Sagna played really not as a fullback, but as a wing back. Okay, so a bit higher on the pitch. While you see Lovitz, he played as a fullback. Okay, so that means that he was far from the defensive line.
Yeah.
So there was nobody. Sorry, Camacho has been yelled at and really treated unfairly. I think. Not unfairly, but last season it was fair, but this season he's had very good games since the beginning of the season, and he doesn't have the confidence in order to be a leader. Raitala, he's not the kind of guy who's a leader. He doesn't have that the leadership required. And Lovitz is Lovitz. He's not a leader either. So you have nobody on the back line that's a leader. The only time that the Impact were really good, it's because they had someone. I completely agree that player is not very good right now, like on the pitch. But as a leader, you had Laurent Simon, who was doing the job of yelling on his defense and being the general of the defense. We don't have any general of the defense.
Yeah, I think in many ways we're too nice as a football team, as a soccer team, and people aren't going to like what I'm about to say. Our next game is in MLS is away to Toronto, and you know what? I'll be very surprised if the outcome of that result is anything other than a Toronto victory, and I'll tell you why. Because we go and we play Toronto, and you know what Toronto do to us? They've got Altidore, they've got Bradley, they've got the big guys at the back, they've Zavaleta, they've got Mavinga, they've got Omar Gonzalez now too. Toronto bully us. Toronto bully Montreal Impact, and Montreal Impact are prepared to be bullied, and I think this is what's going to happen at BMO Field. The only 2 times we've won at BMO Field ever in MLS, the results didn't really matter. When the results have mattered, we've either come away with a fortunate draw or we've lost, even when Toronto didn't play well. And I really do fear for us in this next game. I hope I'm wrong. I'm prepared to end up with egg in my face, but I think we're too nice, and I think they walk all over us, and I can see it happening again.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised either. But the thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if we lose. But looking at the TFC's games in the past few weeks, I don't think they're very good either. So I think it's going to be a draw. It's going to be a draw. I'm pretty sure, and I think a draw would be a very good result for the Impact.
I'd be delighted.
Very, very, very good result.
I'd be delighted if the Impact can get a draw.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen because they got a draw at home against Orlando. I'm sorry, but Orlando now is doing a bit better, but they're not a really strong team. Nani just scored his 9th goal, but as a collective team, they're not that good. So I think I just want to talk a bit more about the player performances yesterday. If you had to choose the best player on the pitch yesterday, I don't like to choose it by looking at the numbers. Okay, he scored. Lassie Lapalainen scored 2 goals. Yes, he did a very good game. But if we look at it as a collective play, who did you think really should win that award in case there was an award of man of the game?
It's a difficult one. I think Lovitz probably didn't do an awful lot wrong. I mean, you got to mention Lapalainen for his 2 goals, but you also got to say that Lapalainen was breathing out his ass the last 30 minutes as well, right?
Exactly.
And that's part of his conditioning, and that's going to come. But at this stage, that's a fact. I guess when I looked through that team last night, and Rudy looked tired at the end as well. Of course, he put in a lot of running. Bojan needs games.
Yeah, for sure.
Bojan's not ready yet. And
a lot of people are criticizing Bojan. He didn't do anything. Yeah, but guys, he just came back from holidays.
The guy hasn't played a full game since April.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
For Stoke City in the Championship. Actually, I don't even know.
No, he was on loan.
I don't even know. No, he played in April for Stoke City.
Oh, okay.
It was the last game he started around mid-April.
Okay.
But he was substituted after 60 minutes in that game too. So I don't know the last time Bojan played 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I do think this is a great signing.
Yeah,
and
me
I think
too.
it's a great longer-term signing. I don't know whether he's going to be the guy that's going to help us in the playoffs this year. I hope he is, but I wasn't convinced of what I saw last night, and I do think it's going to take games. So that was another player. Obviously, we didn't have Piatti, and obviously we didn't have Piat, 2 players who would have helped us.
2 main players.
Yeah, and Piatti's absence has hurt us all season. Let's face it. I think Tabla's probably not ready either yet. I think he's not.
He's not fit.
He's off the pace. So there are a lot of things there that you can throw in where, I know I'm getting off the point a little bit here, and I've mentioned Lovitz probably, I think Ty Dare put a shift in for us too.
Thank you
to be
very
fair.
much.
And I think probably he was our better player. But if you're looking for your leader on the park, he's the guy wearing the armband, and he probably didn't come to the fore in that respect.
And that's why, Paul, I wanted to specify something, because for me, the man of the game, we can't take in consideration the last 20 minutes. If you look at it with 70 minutes, for me there's three leaders. There's Lassi Lappalainen for his 2 goals. Yeah. There's Lovitz, who was really maybe his best game this year. Oh no, not maybe. His best game this year as a left back. He was very good defensively. Offensively, we didn't see him much, but defensively he was
probably
very
a little
good.
bit lucky not to see red though.
Yeah, I'm sure. And a lot of it, there's some people that told me that no, this doesn't deserve a red. I'm like, I'm sorry. In 99.9% of the cases, this is an automatic red card.
You've seen a lot of red cards for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Lovitz and Taida was my third choice. Those 3 players were very good until the 70th minute. Yeah. But the 70th minute, we can't really... Starting with 70th minutes, we can't really point out anybody because everybody played really bad.
Look, the only thing that I could say, maybe from a positive perspective, and it's maybe strange to talk about positives after what we saw in the last sort of half hour last night, but if somehow the Impact, and I'm skeptical about this to be fair, if somehow the Impact can limp into the playoffs in 7th spot or better, which would be great, but if they can limp into the playoffs, when you look around the squad that they have right now, if they can get those players fit, if Bojan can find match fitness, if Piatti can come back and play the way we know he can, and I am concerned about the number of injuries he's picking up, but you look at our squad now, if we can get into the playoffs, and it is a big if, we could actually do some damage.
Yeah, true, but not with I'm not really convinced, because we're not with the new format of the playoffs. Don't forget that you don't have home and away legs anymore. Yeah. It's a one-time thing. So if you finish 7th, even if you go on the MLS Cup, all your games you would have played away.
Yeah.
And for me, that's illogical, and I talked about it a few times already. I don't like that at all. I don't like that new formula at all. I think it's bad not only for the teams that really qualified 6th or 7th or 5th and really battled until the end to get those final spots, but it's not fair for the fans. The fans that support the team during the whole year,
exactly.
When it's raining, when they're outside, when their team is losing, when their team is winning, and you come and you tell the guy, yeah, you supported the team, but you know what? We're never going to play in front of you.
Exactly. Anymore. You know what? It is a horrible format, and I hope they change it. And any championship worth its salt, they're turning the playoffs in MLS into like an FA Cup, and we loved the FA Cup back home in the UK when I was growing up. It was very important, but everybody knew the FA Cup was a lottery, and it's what happens on the day over 90 minutes. And that's what they're turning MLS playoffs into. Now, I would even take that, and again, I'm digressing, I would take that back a little bit further as well. And I think Zlatan talked about it a few weeks ago when he said, the format is crap, or the format is shit, he might have said.
He said
right? Shit. He did say shit, right? And he talks about teams being rewarded for 7th place. And I can identify that because it's a type of football methodology or format that I grew up with, and he has in Europe obviously as well, where he finds it strange that a team finishing 7th is rewarded or can go on and win the championship. But obviously MLS is a very North American type format, and it is what it is, and that's what we got to abide by. But yes, I'm not. It's probably good because of the type of club that Montreal is, because it does give us a chance for postseason football, because I'm not sure we would get it many times otherwise.
True, and don't forget that also that what Zlatan doesn't really understand, and that first of all, the reason why soccer and MLS and a professional soccer league is not more than about 25 years old is because the few times that they tried it before, it didn't work out. So they had to come back to what they know works out is with the NHL and NBA and everything, with the cup at the end, with the MLS playoffs at the end, with that formula. And that I completely understand. And don't forget about also the traveling. they're traveling from one city to another. You can't do home and away with every team. It's going to cost too much.
Yeah.
So Zlatan doesn't really understand the business side of it. So
it is what it is, but I will go back to your original point around the playoffs being a one-off game, as well as reducing it to a more lottery type thing rather than a pure contest between two clubs over two matches, home and away. It does rob the fans of the clubs who sneak into the playoffs in the lower places. And, I really hope Don Garber and MLS look at that for next year, even if they have to reduce the number of teams that actually go into playoffs back down to 6, if that's what they need to do to fit it all into the calendar. Please do it, because it's not fair to Impact fans, for instance. If they do finish 7th, they're not going to get a playoff game at home. It really is.
Exactly. It's really not fair. But let's go back to the point. And we talked about the players that really impressed us. I'm still talking about the first 70 minutes. I don't want to talk about the last 20 minutes. If you had one player that really didn't play well in those first 70 minutes, because like I said, the whole team didn't play well in the last 20, but in the first 70 minutes, who's the player that really underperformed for you?
Who underperformed? Do you know what? I actually thought that Orgy was having a very frustrating night.
You're in my head, Paul. Yeah. You're in my head.
Really? Okay. So I thought he was having a very, very frustrating night until he got the goal. Yeah. And sometimes when you see a player having a night like that, you think he's never going to score, but he actually took his goal well, and he did well to peel off around the back of the defender, and it was a lovely finish. It was an absolutely beautiful cross by Ty Dare as well, with the outside of his boot. Absolutely fantastic. Probably made it easier for Orgy to score, but he was out of sorts last night. He wasn't. He didn't produce the way we've seen him produce. So I don't know if he's the guy. I mean, I was a bit disappointed with the first goal. Pomical, the guy from Dallas, put the ball in, and the ball was going straight to Camacho's right foot, and that's his natural side. And for some reason, he turned and opened his body up and played it with his left, and it went straight to Barrios in the edge of the box. And he had the shot, and people have been critical of Evan Bush, but he got behind the shot and parried it. I don't think there's a goalkeeper in MLS or maybe in the world that would have been able to hold that one. And again, the person who reacted quickest was the big Czech centre forward, and we were rocked back in our heels. So I was a bit disappointed with Camacho in his point in that one. And then if you're dissecting the goals, the second goal, Pepe, their substitute, was able to rise way high above Arudi. Arudi's challenge was pathetic, actually. He tried to get under him and put him off. He didn't actually jump. He didn't leave the ground. The ball went down. Hollingshead knocked it on, and Krolicki was a bit unlucky. So, and then you got to look at the third goal as well, another set piece, and we didn't compete in the air.
As usual, but you know what? It's we're used to that now, because again, we don't have exactly the same that leadership in the back, and people that really and Bush. I don't hear him talk with his defenders. I'm sorry. I'm exactly, for people who don't know, I'm in section 115. I'm directly behind the goal of Evan Bush, and he didn't say one word. One word. And I don't want to blame Bush for everything, but I think it's a whole thing. The defenders are not talking. The goalkeeper is not talking. So of course you're going to concede goals, and that's completely normal.
Evan's been at the club a long time, and he needs to be one of those leaders that step up that we talk about. And I wouldn't have been so critical of his performance last night. I think he made a couple of decent saves at good times for us, and should he command his box a little bit better than he does? Yeah, he probably does. But look around MLS, and which MLS goalkeeper really does? I'm not quite sure there are too many. Maybe Tim Howard in his day.
No, you have Vega from the Earthquake. That's really, really good.
Okay, so
very, very good.
So maybe, but it's a rarity rather than something that's commonplace. And I just thought it was very, very I think when you look at the way we defend set pieces, and I got this thing in my head that any good coach can coach his team to defend set pieces, because it's one of the fundamentals of the game, right? I don't know why this is not going well for the Impact and Remy Gard, because I'm sure he can see it, right? He probably sees it before we do, and it's so obvious to us it's untrue. So he's got to be working the drills in the training ground to help these guys get around this massive problem, and he's got to be pulling them aside and telling them what he thinks, and I'm sure he is, because for me he's an honest honest coach.
Yeah, but you know what, Paul? I completely agree with you, but we've had that problem on set pieces since 2012. Yeah. So people are pointing Remy Gard, what are you doing during the whole week? Yeah. You're not training on set pieces. He is, like Biello did, like Shalibam did, like Klopas did. Yeah. But I don't know why. We don't have that leader. We don't have that experience in the central defense. And even in the goalkeeper. Unfortunately, Bush is a very good shot-stopping goalkeeper. But as a leader, there's something called communication in the area, in the goalkeeping area. Yeah. He's not good. He doesn't go out. He doesn't control he's not commanding his area, his goalkeeping area. He's not a commanding goalkeeper.
It's almost as if the players are not focused enough, and there's some players waiting for somebody else to do the job rather than step in and do what they. I'm maybe not explaining that too well, but I guess what I'm saying is players are relying on other players to do something and not being there to pick up the baton if it doesn't go right, and it's kind of like everybody's waiting on somebody else to do it, right? And that is a lack of leadership, and what the Impact needs to do, they need to go out and get somebody. And I thought they probably had it with Diallo early season, but Diallo went off the boil too, and Diallo became part of the problem at set pieces also. Mm-hmm. But the Impact actually needs to go out and find somebody with the leadership qualities to be able to lift the guys up by the lapels, by the whatever you want to call it, and say, guys, and I've heard Bakary Sagna do it post-match after we'd lost to the game 3-2 in Chicago, and his rhetoric was absolutely right, and somebody needs to be doing it on the pitch, and if they keep getting this wrong, right, and they do keep getting this wrong, maybe it's not about attitude, maybe it's not about character, maybe some of the players are just not good enough.
Yeah, true. I don't believe it's the case, but you know what, and that's perfect, because it's going to be a very good transition with our next subject. Where do we go from here? What do you think is going to happen with the Impact? I know that you talked about the next game in Toronto, but what do you think? Playoffs, no playoffs? Do you think there's a way for the Impact to really climb up again that mountain that they were on top of at one point during the season?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I kind of, when things happen at the Impact and they get a good result, like the 4-0 against Philadelphia, people go overboard, right? When we lose, like we did, well, we didn't lose last night, but it felt like a defeat.
Yeah, it was a loss.
When we have something like last night, people tend to go down on the team and again go overboard. So I try to stay in the middle and see it objectively, and I am finding it difficult at the minute to be optimistic for the Impact, and I think if I'm a realist, I'll look at what we've done this season. I'll say if we don't get Piet back quickly, and if we don't get Piatti back quickly, I don't see any playoffs for Montreal Impact. Now, I hope I so hope I'm wrong, but the saving grace for us is that all the teams that I think that are playing for the last two spots, because I think there's pretty much five teams who have covered the top 5 spots, and I think there's maybe 4 of us fighting for the last 2, and it's ourselves, New England, Toronto, and Orlando. I think New England are definitely going to make
Chicago
it. I think
Chicago is at 1 point from the Impact now.
Yeah, but I think they have a game more played as well, right?
Yeah, they have a game more played.
I think it's going to be a little bit too far for Chicago, but I think it's 2 from those 4, and I actually fancy New England for sure, and I think Toronto will be the other one that sneaks in. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult for us. If we don't get Piet and Piatti back, I don't see it happening.
You know what? That's why I disagree with you. Because if you look at our... I really like to look at what we have left at our calendar, okay? I know we're playing some difficult teams, and we're playing DC United at home. We're playing Atlanta at home. We're playing the Red Bulls at home. But we still have, on those few games left, we have 7 games left. We have 5 games at home, 2 games away. The only 2 games away are Toronto and the Galaxy. And you look at the other teams, they have more games away than the home games, or the same. And you look at their calendar, like if you look at Toronto's calendar, Toronto is going... First of all, New England and Toronto are playing against each other. Toronto is going to New England, so there's one that's going to fall there. Even if it's a draw, it's a good thing for the Impact. Then Toronto is playing at Cincinnati at Yankee Stadium against New York City FC. And then they're playing in Los Angeles FC, which is like, I'm sure, a sure defeat. And they're playing at Chicago.
Yeah.
And they're playing against Columbus that I'm sure at the last game of the season. So it's going to be very hard for Toronto. And then you have New England, and also they're playing at Yankee Stadium, at Orlando. They're playing at Portland, and they're playing at Atlanta. Yeah. So you know what? Yes, I'm not very happy of the form of the Impact. Yeah. They don't. If I look at the Impact side and I look at the team, and I don't look at the opponents that they're playing against for that playoff spot. Yes, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs, and I don't think they'll make the playoffs. But when I look at the calendars, the other teams have a very tough schedule, a lot tougher than us.
I have to agree that the thing that gives me hope is the same thing as what you've just said, that the other teams have difficult schedules. I just think the likes of Toronto and New England have probably more character than what we have in our team, and this is the time of the season when character's got to kick in and take you the extra mile, if you like. I think that it will go to the wire, and I think we'll probably be heading into our last 2 home games, Atlanta and New York Red Bulls, still with a chance and still needing to win both of those to reach the playoffs. I still think that we're probably going to come up short. Now, if by some way we get Piet and Piatti back quickly, then that probably alters the picture again. But without those 2 guys, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for us, because I look at our games away to the Galaxy, we're not getting points there. Away to Toronto,
you'd be surprised. The Galaxy defensively, they're really not good.
Have you seen our record against the Galaxy away from home?
I've seen the record, but if you look at it here, if you look at the last 5 games of the Galaxy, 3 losses, 1 win, 1 draw.
What's their last 3 home games?
Last 3 home games of
they've beaten Impact. LAFC. They've beaten Dallas.
Oh, you mean the Galaxy? No,
the Galaxy.
They did yesterday. There was a draw against Seattle at home. They beat Dallas 2-0, and then the other one in MLS. They beat LAFC 3-2. But you know what?
Yeah. I think it's going, and you know what? I talked about the likes of Toronto bullying us, right? What's Zlatan going to do?
Yeah, but you know, the game just before, they lost 3-1 at home against San Jose, and San Jose, it's another derby.
Right. Okay.
So you know what?
Okay.
All I'm saying is that it's not a sure loss. You know, I will not be surprised if it's a loss.
And I think it.
But think about the home games. I don't care about away games.
I don't think you could say any of them are a certain loss. But I'm just, my opinion is we're not going to get anything out of Toronto. We're not going to get anything at the Galaxy. Then we've got 5 home games. We've got Vancouver, DC, Cincinnati, Atlanta, New York Red Bulls. So the last 2 are going to be very difficult depending on whether those teams need the points, right? Atlanta at home, that's going to be a hard one to win. We tend to do well at home to the Red Bulls, so I'm a bit more optimistic there. Cincinnati at home and Vancouver look like shoe-ins, but nothing's a shoe-in for us at the moment, right? And then the DC United game at home is winnable too. But again, I guess my confidence is low in the team at the moment because of recent results.
Because of yesterday. And I completely understand. But you know what?
Well, I want to look at it. We've won 1 game in 8, right?
True, but you know what? I think we can't be worse than what we are right now. Don't forget that our central defense was playing, I think, for the first time in the season together. Right, Tala Camacho? I think it's the first time in the season, or maybe the second time No, I think it's the first time. I think there was one game Camacho and Cabrera played together, and one game it was Cabrera and Raitala, but never Camacho and Raitala. So that's one thing.
And for sure, these guys are going to get more games together because Cabrera is still injured. But I looked at Raitala last night, and for me, since Raitala's been at our club over the 2-year period. Don't get me wrong, I think the best defender we have seen at the club over the last 2 years has been Rod Fanny, but he was there for a shorter period of time. But our most consistent defender over the last 2 years, and most of the time he's a left back and he's played out of position, has been Raitala. To me last night he looked shaky, and I think the reason he looked shaky was because he was being partnered by Camacho.
Because he's not used to him, but I think it's going to be better. But think about it from a statistical point of view, okay? Look at the impact. The impact right now at home is at 6 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws. Okay, so that's pretty good for a team that's 7th in the East. So it's still over 500. So if you look at it from that perspective, of the 5 games left, you should win 3. So by winning 3, and knowing that Toronto and Orlando and New England have more away games than home games. It's simple math. Now, like I said, it's not going to be a long run in the playoffs, and that wasn't the objectives at the beginning of the season. I said at the beginning of the season that we should qualify between the 5th and the 7th place. We're still on track. I don't think it's we're doing a great season, and we're not doing a very bad season either. We're just right now. We're in a very bad momentum right now, and a very bad series of games. But I think we're going to be better. I think we're going to be better very, very soon. And what can help us is the derbies. We have 3 derbies left. One derby in MLS, and then the derbies for the Canadian Championship.
Yeah.
And that, if we have some good games against Toronto, it can lift us up.
It can lift confidence, I agree, but I think the thing that probably the main source of my skepticism or pessimism is probably the lack of character that we see in the team. And again, this is another reason why I think that it's absolutely imperative we get, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute we rush them back, because if we do, you're going to probably be without them until next year. The Piat and the Piatti thing, we need those guys back. Both those guys have character, and they're probably, in that respect, they're key elements to the team, and they're key elements to the team for other reasons too. But I honestly think if we don't get these 2 guys back quickly, we're in big diffs around the play.
I completely agree with you. And if you think about it, they said it was a 3 weeks absence. So at best, we should have Piet and Piatti back against Vancouver on the 28th of August. At worst, it should be the 31st, or maybe the 31st of August against DC United. Yeah. So you know what? We'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 games left. So everything would be still. I would still be in the run. So you know what? Unless they just injure themselves again, I think we're still okay. We'll see about it. We'll see about that in the next few weeks. I just need to say one last thing about the impact right now. Is that look at the Montreal Impact starting 11 right now? Okay, you have Boyan that is gonna have a few games in the next couple of weeks. So I think on the final run, if we're able to get 1 or 2 positive results of the next 2 games, I think it's going to help us a lot. Boyan is going to be able to help us a lot at the end of the season. And I think that it will give time for Piet and Piatti to come back to the team. So you need a result, maybe a draw, or maybe... Yeah, a draw will be great at Toronto, and you need a win against Vancouver. Yeah. And if you do that, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, there's maybe a couple of things before we close the podcast that I want to throw in, and I saw a lot of traffic on Twitter this morning about Remy Gard singling out Tabla for criticism or maybe blaming him for the loss. And I attended the press conference last night, and the way it came out on Twitter is not the way it was actually, because quite frankly, Remy Gard was asked last night very pointedly and very specifically by an English journalist. He made the point that he played 20 minutes, and he asked Remy Gard how he felt about Tabla's performance. So all Remy Gard did was answer that question, and I don't think he'd have mentioned Tabla apart from that. And I think his comments as well were very fair. He basically said, he'd spoken to the player, and the player said he was ready, and in Remy's opinion, as he expressed last night, he didn't feel he was quite ready. He didn't feel he was maybe at the pace of the game, and a player of his calibre, he was expecting more. And I think what Gard meant by that was he was expecting him to be more involved in defensive duties than he was. And we know Tabla because we've seen him before, and Remy Gard probably doesn't know him so well, and he is a player who doesn't like to defend. But I want to go to pains to point out that he wasn't singled out for criticism last night. It was very much a question asked by another journalist. But one other thing that a very specific question. One other thing that I wanted to bring up, and we're talking about earlier whose fault it was and all this kind of stuff, and this goes back down to the very fabric of the club. And the model in North America is a bit different than what I grew up with, for instance, in Europe, where the coach probably has, very much the main part of control around the club, around recruitment, obviously team selection and all that kind of stuff. I think the model's a little bit different here in North America, especially when it comes to recruitment, right? And to a large extent, and some of the players that Remy has brought in, for me, haven't really worked out either. And the ones that I would have said he would have probably been most influential in bringing to the club, and I'm thinking about a Novio, and I'm thinking maybe Diallo too, who started off well this season and then tapered off. And there was somebody else in my mind too, but anyway, I think he's relying on people going out to recruit players, and there may be a policy, and we don't know all of this to be sure, but there may be a policy in the club. There's definitely things that we don't know about, right? And when they set their mandate to go out and understand how they want to recruit players, what the club's identity is going to be, at least I hope they go out and try and work towards creating an identity, because a lot of what we've seen so far, and I know a lot of people have said this on Twitter as well, it's been short-term recruitment. A lot of people criticise what we've done about bringing players from Bologna. I think that's an important part of our strategy, and it should be utilised, but I would like to see a more in-depth, somebody needs to sit down and say, right, this is what we're doing, right? But it's been too much year to year for me, right? I would like to see a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan strategy to build this club in the identity that the people running the club want. And I don't think we have ever had that from 2012. We've gone from kind of maybe one model to the next model. We've thrown a player in here, we've thrown a player in there. And the worst season was 2014. We just qualified for the playoffs in 2013. We really did nothing in the off season. It was pathetic, and the next year we were bottom of the pile. And the other thing about this too is we need to get our thinking caps on at Montreal Impact, because this league is taking leaps and bounds forward. And you look at what's happening next year in Miami. You look at what David Beckham's doing with those guys are not coming in to be the Cincinnati. They're not coming in to be the make-weight. They're coming in to be the next Atlanta. And you know what? It's not going to get any easier for Montreal Impact. So we need to start thinking outside the box.
I completely understand. But you know what? You have teams that are really here, like Atlanta, like Los Angeles FC, like Miami maybe next year. Yes, but you have also teams like Minnesota that takes time before they're really good. This year they're very good. The first 3 seasons they weren't. So I don't mind being the underdog for the Montreal Impact, and I completely understand. I don't like to be the big spending club.
I don't
as
mind.
You can see, I'm a Marseille fan, right?
I don't mind being the underdog either, and I'm also not advocating we're the big spending club. all I'm trying to say is, I think what we have seen in the past, in our MLS life, if you like, is we have reacted to other clubs getting better and the game moving on in North America and the standards rising. We have been in a completely reactionary mode.
Completely right, and I agree with you 100%. But I just have to give them credit. This year they're trying to do things differently. Yes, they did hire Novillo, they did hire Brownie, but you know what? They had at least that were good enough to maybe to sell them back and to admit their error, which they weren't in the past. Do you remember how many years did we carry our bad players before? We used to offer a contract for 3 years. The player was bad for 6 months. We used to keep him for 3 years. Now at least we're able to take a decision. You know what? It didn't work out. Bye-bye. Have a nice life. You know what? And that's what the Impact needs to do. And you know what? They're doing things right now. You see Boyan that was signed. I think it's a good signing for the years to come. We see Lapalainen. We see Okwonko with the good synergy with Bologna. That's going well. It's not the guy that Bologna doesn't want that's being shipped to Montreal. Lapalainen, even Sabatini said Lapalainen is ready for the Serie A. But now we're sending it we're sending him for the Impact. You know what? That's some positive stuff that I'm looking at with the Montreal Impact. Now they need even the front office. There's a lot of new things that's being added. You see Kevin Gilmore coming in. You see Vasily Kramanzidis coming in. They're starting to be a bit more professional than they were before. It's just going to take a bit of time. I think right now we have our, if we want to call him a bit our franchise player with Boyan that's just being signed. Does it mean that Piatti will not be here next year? I think that's what it means, but we'll see about it. We have very good players with Steider, with Piet that are here, and they should be, like, I'm sure Piet is going to sign a new contract pretty soon. So you know what? There is some sort of a new beginning this year. We're just going to see how it's going to unfold. I hope we're not going to... We learned from our mistakes since 2012 that you talked about before. I think that we did. We're going to see in the next season.
And this is not about knocking the owner or knocking Kevin Gilmore. It's really not. I think it's an absolute privilege and a pleasure to have an MLS club to go and watch here in Montreal, and all credit for making that happen. I just still feel that I'm not so sure I see an identity emerging around this football club, and you've made a fair point that in the last year with Mr. Gilmore coming on board, etc., you know, things may be about to change, and I hope that's the case. I just don't see enough evidence yet, and I think some of the recent signings have been encouraging, right? Absolutely, they've been encouraging, but I then go back to the Tabla thing, I go back to the Lapalainen thing, and I go back to the Okwonko thing, and I think we're right to tap into Bologna for players. Don't get me wrong, but you know, my concern is, you know, especially with Lapalainen, how much longer? You know, he could be away after a year. Tabla could be away after a year. And, you know, it's going to be a very, very busy off-season, and I hope they're not waiting for the off-season. I hope they're working all these things out from now and even before now. But we need to get a squad that's going to be competitive next year, and it's not just enough to upgrade or replace players from this year. We need to go out and look for players that are going to help take our club forward, because that's what's happening at the other franchises.
Exactly, and you're completely right, but I think I completely agree with you with that point. We need to see on the long term, and there's nothing I can say more. I think that's about it for this post game. I hope you guys liked it. It was, I think, amazing. First time that we do that. Please comment, retweet on Twitter. Talk about us, ask us questions, and give us your thoughts.
And hopefully the next time we do this, we'll be talking about a really good result. So guys, thanks very much for listening. Again, it was Hady Raphael and Paul Vance. I'm at Paul Vance 63 on Twitter. Hady's at
Soccer en Folie, so at Soccer en Folie on Twitter too.
So keep listening, guys. We'll be doing this again, of course, after the next game, and we look forward to receiving your comments. So please don't hesitate. Let us know. Cheers.